Hi guys, so Boris Johnson and Ian Blackford, the leader of the SNP in the House of Commons, clashed on the issue of nuclear weapons being stored in Scotland. Now, before we get to that, I just want to show you a list of the powers that have been devolved to the Scottish Parliament and the powers that are reserved in Westminster. So you can see here in this list, health, education, local government, law and home affairs, the environment, sports and the arts, social security and taxation. These are issues that have been devolved to the Scottish Parliament. So the Scottish people have control over most of these issues. Now, the others are reserved powers. These are powers that remain within the UK Parliament. Westminster decides these. So it's constitutional affairs, defence, foreign affairs, central economic policy, social security, and then other. So the issue we're going to talk about today, of course, is defence and the fact that there are nuclear weapons residing in Scotland, and the Scottish people can't really do much about that because it's not a devolved power.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. Mr. Speaker, for people across Scotland, this week again exposed a tale of two governments with two very different sets of values. Yesterday, the SNP government passed landmark legislation that will put the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child into Scots law, putting children at the vanguard of children's rights. In contrast, we have a UK government that has to be shamed into providing free school meals, that will clap for nurses but won't give them a fair wage, and ploughs billions into a nuclear arsenal that sits redundant on the Clyde. Does the Prime Minister understand that the Scottish people are best served with a government that lives up to their values? A government, Prime Minister, that prioritises bairns, not bombs.
So burns as in children. This is typical of Ian Blackford. He is contrasting the government in Scotland and the government in London, in Westminster. That one is caring for people and the other is not. And of course he raised the issue, he highlighted the issue of looking after children and the NHS, and how Boris Johnson has ignored both of those in a sense. So let's hear how Boris Johnson responded to that.
Prime Minister.
I think what the people of Scotland need and deserve, Mr. Speaker, is a government that tackles the problems of education in Scotland, that addresses itself to fighting crime and drug addiction in Scotland, and a government in Scotland that weans itself off its addiction to constitutional change and constitutional argument, and it seems determined to call in the middle of a pandemic when the country is trying to move forward together, seems determined and obsessed with nothing else, Mr. Speaker, nothing else than breaking up the country and a reckless referendum.
It's the Scottish Conservatives who keep banging on about a referendum and how there shouldn't be a referendum. Ian Blackford hasn't mentioned anything about a referendum, but this is typical from Boris Johnson, is to not listen to the actual question, but respond to something else.
Ian Blackford, Ian.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Of course, this is Prime Minister's questions. The Prime Minister, maybe just once, might start to try and answer a question that's put to him, because we're talking about a Tory plan to impose a 40% increase in nuclear warheads. Our children have the right to a future that no longer lives under the shadow of these weapons of mass destruction. As the Irish President said on this St. Patrick's Day, surely we need to find ways to make peace, not war. Every single one of these weapons will be based on the Clyde. So can the Prime Minister tell us exactly when the Scottish people gave him the moral or democratic authority to impose these weapons of mass destruction on our soil in Scotland?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Scotland contribute enormously to the health, happiness, well-being and security of this entire country, not least through their contribution to our science, our defences, our international aid and many, many other ways. And I'm very proud that this government is investing record sums in defence, including maintaining our nuclear defence, which is absolutely vital for our long-term security, and helping thereby to drive jobs not just in Scotland, but across the whole of the UK.
Okay, of course, he didn't respond to the question. Now, why are these nukes basically being stored in Scotland? Now, some will say that it's for strategic reasons. I think maybe that could be defended. But I think there's also the point that the Scots can't do anything about it. It's not a devolved power. They can't say no. Westminster decides. And isn't it interesting that these weapons of mass destruction are not being stored in England? You know, in a conservative constituency. They're being stored in Scotland. And, you know, at the same time, Boris Johnson is saying, yes, we're investing more in defence. But we're not investing more in children. We're not investing more in pay for the NHS, unless you call the 1% pay rise an investment. But this is to, once again, like Brexit, is to convince a certain section of society that the government is bringing back the empire or something like that. Look how much we are, you know, global Britain. Look how much we are demonstrating our strength to the world. It doesn't matter if children go hungry. It doesn't matter if the NHS is collapsing and being sold off piecemeal. We have to just give the impression to people that we're powerful. It doesn't matter if trade has dropped. It doesn't matter if the fishing industry has collapsed. We just have to continue the facade that things are great. It's like the person who, you know, buys a flashy car, but their children go to a food bank. It's all a facade. And the Tories know that if they can continue to promote the facade, certain voters will believe them and will continue to vote them back into power. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?